Finally, finally, we are on the final lesson that I owe you guys for Unit 6, and we're going to talk about how to conserve energy. So, how can individuals conserve energy? We're going to look at two different pathways. How can individual people conserve energy? And then how can society as a whole, or countries, cities, whatever unit of people you really want to talk about, how can they conserve energy? Because there are different things that you personally can do versus what your city or your state or your country can do. So, one of the things that people can do is either buy energy efficient homes or add features to their homes to make them more energy efficient. For example, they can add solar panels. Insulation is very important because it helps reduce the amount you have to pay for heating and cooling your home, which is a really big part of people's energy usage. Same thing with roof insulation. You can have energy efficient windows, which will reduce the amount of heat that you lose in the winter and heat that you gain in the summer. Once again, reducing your energy cost for heating and cooling. Low flow water fixtures will reduce your use of water, which, as we'll talk about in a little bit, can reduce the amount of energy that we use, having more efficient lighting, by which I mean using LED lights. Induction cooktops are actually more energy efficient than gas or the other type of electric cooktop. Then you can use energy efficient appliances and make sure that your water heater is energy efficient. For example, if you have a traditional gas powered or electric water heater, you can actually buy I forget what they're called, but they're covers that you can put around your water heater to insulate it, or you could just go full energy efficiency and use a solar heater, which can help supplement the amount of electricity you're using to heat water by using solar power. An air to water heat pump would be transferring heat to water. I'm assuming for either your water heater or for heating and cooling purposes. So let's talk about how you reduce your use of heating and air conditioning because that's a large chunk of what we spend our energy on. If you'll look at this diagram, I really like this. This is somebody took a thermal image of a house. This is something you can actually get companies to do, and you can then get a kind of idea of how much energy your home is losing. So this is a house that half of it is insulated. Notice that the insulated half is going to release less heat. It's not as warm. So the warmer the color, the more orange the color, the more heat is escaping. You do have some heat escaping from the windows, but notice it's much less than this kind of less energy efficient side. So these people probably either have more energy efficient windows or they're protective coatings you can put on your windows to help kind of reduce heat transfer. Notice the insulated half, uninsulated half, you've got like some sagging insulation. And so if a company comes and does this kind of inspection of your home, they can make recommendations for how you can improve the insulation and kind of reduce heat loss from your home to make sure that you are saving energy, which also translates to saving money. So one thing you can do is adjust your thermostat. I will say that I have a programmable thermostat, so I make sure when I'm not at home during the day, the temperature is either lower in the winter, so I'm not spending as much on heating, or higher in the summer, so I'm not spending as much on cooling. You can actually conserve up to 10% of your energy by changing your thermostat. When I say turning your thermostat back, I mean, making it higher temperature in the summer and a lower temperature in the winter by 7 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 hours a day. I will admit I don't go that far in my home. It's usually 2 to 3 degrees, but I'll look into this and see how much energy it saves and whether or not um, it'll make a difference to how warm or cool my house feels when I come inside. And I may consider, changing how much I adjust my thermostat. So, for example, if right now in the winter you keep your thermostat at 70 degrees, you may want to shift it down to 68 degrees when you're there. Maybe throw on an extra layer of clothes, which could save energy and money. You can also increase insulation. So notice the insulated half of this house is losing a lot less energy and radiating a lot less heat than the uninsulated half. And you put insulation both in your walls to help keep heat from escaping or entering through your walls, as well as in attics. Now it's hard to stuff insulation down your walls, but it is easy to add insulation into your attic. For example, my house was actually radiating a lot of heat in the winter through the roof. I could tell because when there was ice or snow on the roof, mine would melt because the heat from the house was warming it up. And so I added some insulation. And now, when it's icy outside, I go outside and the ice and snow on my roof is not melted anymore, which is proof that I'm not losing as much heat. If you conserve water, that can also save energy. So, to get water to your house, it takes a lot of energy. You have to move it. And sometimes that involves pumping it out of the ground, other times that just involves transporting it. You have to purify it. That's water treatment. So before water goes into your house, it is purified so it's safe for drinking, which is why you could actually technically drink water from your shower. I wouldn't drink water from your toilet. That's a dog thing. And then it takes energy to heat that water. In fact, heating water, your water heater accounts for up to 15% of the energy that your household is using. So it's a pretty big expense and a pretty big expenditure usage of energy. So if you use less water, that decreases the amount of energy we use for all of those things. Another way you can reduce water use is by doing something called conservation landscaping. That's where you use more native plants that allows you to let them survive without watering them as much, which conserves water, which again saves energy. And we'll talk more about xeriscaping, which is the fancy term for conservation landscaping. And if you want to see it written down, that's xeriscaping. We'll talk more about that in another lesson. You can also buy energy efficient appliances. So if you look for this logo, the Energy Star logo, that means it's certified by the US government to meet specific standards for being energy efficient. Most of these are going to be far more efficient than the federal minimum standards for both efficiency and quality. You can also now start to get smart appliances that are controlled by these systems where they'll shift electricity use to off peak hours. What this is designed to do is make sure you're not drawing a ton of electricity when everyone else is, so we don't have blackouts and things. Um, then you can also look at this tag if you're buying appliances. Called an energy guide. It gives you a whole lot of information. So, for example, a really big deal is here you can see about how much it would cost to operate this device. In this case, it's a washer, so laundry machine. And so this thing would cost about $13 to operate for a year. Notice the cost range of similar models. So it could cost anywhere from $71 to $10 a year. So this is on the low end of the spectrum. This is showing you about how much energy it's estimated to use per per year. And then you can also see if there is an Energy Star logo that lets you know it's more energy efficient. Another thing you can do personally is reduce your use of automobiles. You can walk or bike places when possible. Now, I know if you live in North Texas, this is very hard to do. We just don't have cities designed for people to walk a lot of places. They're designed for people to have a car and drive places. I will tell you that if I relied on walking only to get food, the only place I could get food would be like a Williams Chicken. There's not a grocery store within easy walking distance of myself. Um, Purchasing a hybrid or an electric vehicle, of course, this depends on whether you're in the market for a new vehicle and if you can afford one. The electric vehicles are coming down in cost. Using public transportation, so if you use the DART system here in Dallas, if you're in a major city elsewhere and you use the metro or the subway, that can reduce automobile use, which reduces our use of energy. You can also carpool as well if you're going to the same place as other people. Now, how can we as a society conserve energy? There are a number of things that cities can put in place, states, countries as well. So, one thing that the US government does is it sets what's called the Corporate Average Fuel Economy Standards, or they're called the CAFE standards, which regulate basically how many miles per gallon a car has. And so these standards are actually getting higher every year, and they don't penalize or prohibit producing cars that have these lower miles per gallon. but they do have penalties for car makers. So car makers are, going to have to pay money if they put out these fuel efficient cars. So notice, for example, domestic cars in around 2020 were averaging somewhere between 40 and 45 miles per gallon. Um, Whereas light trucks were somewhere around like close to 30 miles per gallon. And so these standards are being raised every year to make sure that car manufacturers are putting out cars that are more fuel efficient and use less gasoline. All right. Then you can purchase a battery electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle. So battery electric vehicles, which are these guys right here, are going to run completely on an electric motor. So notice they have a battery, they have an electric motor, and a lot of them have what's called regenerative braking, which means when you brake, you store energy in the battery, which is great because it's another source of energy for you to use. There are also plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Hybrid vehicles have both an internal combustion engine, which is sometimes abbreviated ICE, and an electric motor. So here you see the internal combustion engine in this plug-in hybrid, but you can actually plug this in and have a battery charge. If you have a plug-in hybrid or even just a hybrid, what it'll do is it'll run on its battery until the charge runs out, at which point it'll switch from the electric motor over to the internal combustion engine motor. And then here you see also a fuel cell vehicle, which is using a hydrogen tank, which then connects to a fuel cell, which then produces electricity that goes to the electric motor. If it's producing extra, if you have that regenerative braking, then you can store some of that energy in the form of the battery. Public transportation includes a number of things: buses, um, trolleys, rails, ferries, and for some reason I forgot to include subways. Um, what this does is, since they carry a lot of passengers, they reduce the amount of miles per gallon per passenger. So here we see a chart that's showing you, so on average, per person, a car uses 42 miles per gallon. A pickup truck uses on average 36 miles per gallon. Then a transit bus uses per person 26 miles per gallon. So notice that's much lighter, or that's lower. Transit trains use 141 miles per gallon. Notice that if you have high ridership or high occupancy, that increases it even more. So, for example, if you're carpooling, you and your three friends who live in the neighborhood drive to school every day, that takes the miles per gallon per person up to 137.5. So, notice this is data that's showing uh, basically the energy usage of these various forms of transit. If you have a transit train like, a metro or a subway that has a lot of people riding it, it can get up to 600 miles per gallon per person. Some of these also run on alternative energy sources like electricity or biofuels. I know a lot of DART buses run on LNG, liquefied natural gas, so they're not relying on traditional fossil fuel sources, though, liquefied natural gas is technically a fossil fuel. Then you can design your buildings so that they are green. Green buildings are going to minimize the energy use and the water consumption. So they increase the efficiency of the buildings, how they use energy and water and materials as well. So here we see an example of a green building design. It's got solar panels, that's the photovoltaics generation, rooftop planting, so that has a couple of different functions. One, it acts as insulation. Two, it increases greenery, so you're producing more oxygen, taking in more carbon. Um, Based on planting of trees, you can restrict sunlight entering the building. Motion detection lights will turn off lights when there's not movement, which will then reduce your energy usage, so you don't have a light on for an empty room. High efficiency light fixtures, so like LED lights. Um, then incorporating natural lighting so that you're not using artificial lighting as much. Improved vent insulation to reduce your energy loss. Here we have a rainwater utilization system, which would decrease the amount of water that you're having to use because you're using rainwater. And so these are designed to kind of be more efficient and more environmentally friendly throughout the entire lifespan of the building. So, construction, design, where you choose to put it, operating it, maintaining it, renovating it, and finally tearing it down. All of those are supposed to be more eco friendly. All right, so we talked about a lot of ways to conserve energy. These aren't the only ways to conserve energy, but there are a lot of the big ones. And that is an image of myself in what I'm about to do. I'm going to go into energy conservation mode and go to sleep.